viewers, you're welcome once again to the Gifty O Conversations. Thank you for always supporting this channel. We are really grateful. Today, we are going to talk about a topic that is dear to my heart because it's about children. And we have our sister, Deborah Dzifa Tamakloe, with us. I call her Debbie all the time. So please pardon me if I call her Debbie here. She is the founder of Charis Touch Foundation, which is an NGO with the purpose of helping children in orphanages and underprivileged children in society. And I am so glad to have her here today. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
We thank God. Thank God. We are having a bit of challenge with the internet connection. So once you've seen her face, we'll go on with the conversation. And then at the end, hopefully, she can switch back on her video so that we can say bye to her. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm really grateful.
Thank you, Gifty.
Let's go straight to the point. I am really curious about orphanages and how things work in orphanages, both public and if there are private orphanages. Now, let me ask, the children in orphanages, are they all children who have lost both parents, or are there children in orphanages that have parents but still end up in orphanages?
Okay, thank you, Gifty, for having me. So yes, I mean, growing up, I also thought that every child you see in the orphanage is an orphan until I ended up in the orphanage. And that's when I realized that not every child you see in the orphanage is an orphan. So we have 3 categories of orphans that you are likely to meet in every orphanage or to see in every orphanage. And the good thing is, normally when donors come around, the founders or the managers of the orphanages don't have the time to pinpoint that this child is a single orphan, or this child is a double orphan, or this child is a social orphan. So these are the 3 categories. The social orphans are children with parents, but end up in the orphanages because of social issues like poverty, maybe a parent serving a long time in prison, or a parent is bedridden, or all the social issues that you can think of. So it makes children end up there. And I was once a social orphan, meaning that I have both parents, but I ended up in the orphanage. And we have double orphans, and they are children who have lost both parents, and we have single orphans. They have either lost a mother or a father. So these are 3 categories of children that you are likely to meet in every orphanage. Not all of them have lost, both parents. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you ended up in an orphanage. Do you care to share your story with us?
Well, yeah, I do. It's in the past now, so I can talk about it comfortably. So I ended up in the orphanage in 2005. Back then my parents were going through divorce, and I don't blame them because probably maybe that was the best option they had at that time. So somebody spoke to my mom about an orphanage and the fact that if they take me there, it would really help. And considering the fact that the home is not conducive. So I was sent there, hoping that they will come for me, but it didn't happen. I spent almost like a decade in the orphanage. And there are so many factors and emotions that comes with growing up in an orphanage. And mine was a bit not easy because having both parents alive and being branded as an orphan is not an easy ice to break. So at the end of the day, that emotional void and the psychological effects and trauma, it made me bitter. I had some hatred for my parents, but I now understand things so well. From a different perspective, that was the best they could do for me. So yes, that's the little I can share for now.
Wow.
About my life in the orphanage.
Yeah. You know, I actually didn't think that, you know, in Africa, we are really into family and extended family systems and things like that. So I would think that if probably one of your parents is dead, or even both parents are dead, you should have an external family member, like an aunt or an uncle, taking care of you. The fact that in Africa we compare ourselves to the West as we being hospitable, we like family, extended family systems. It's really interesting to know that there are still children in orphanages who have parents alive, even uncles and aunties alive. I mean, it's difficult to think about that. You
Yeah.
mentioned psychological effects. What are some of the issues that you think the orphans faced just because they were in the orphanage? Psychological effects that happened to people in the orphanage compared to people living with parents.
Yeah. So you know, in every orphanage, you know, basically we depend on donations, okay? And you know, I remember an instance where some visitors visited, you know, they came to the orphanage I was in years back, and all of them were crying, you know, they were just crying uncontrollably. But we had seen food, so we're happy. And you know, at that time, we didn't understand why they were crying. And apparently, you know, they felt sad for us and they pitied us. I mean, that situation we were in. Now, growing up in the orphanage comes with so much difficulties because for every child to grow, you know, well or holistically good, that child needs to be provided with that social support, emotional support, physical support, spiritual support. But in the orphanage, basically the support that we are given is the physical support, and sometimes a bit of the spiritual support because of the prayers. And you know, one major thing, the support like everyone needs most aside the physical is the emotional and social support. And it will interest you to know that, you know, the caretaker to child ratio realistically is supposed to be one caretaker to an orphan or to, you know, a child, but that's not the case. You can have like one caretaker to 30 or 40 kids. And you know, this caretaker doesn't have the time to meet every of the emotional needs of all these children. And so at the end of the day, you tend to bottle up all the pain, you tend to bottle up all the emotions. And growing up as I am now, you know, it becomes difficult even sharing information with family. Sometimes you just confide in friends, or you keep it to yourself, or you just tell God about it. So these are things that really affect children, but people do not know. And so the least option, oh, there's an orphanage here, take that child. And come to think of the family dysfunctionality. You know, once a family is broken, it's broken. For instance, I spent like a decade in the orphanage and I lost touch with my parents. I lost touch with family. I formed a new family who were like, you know, age mates and all of that. And now as we speak, that dysfunctionality is still there. I'm not really able to bond with my family or my parents as it's supposed to be. And that is really traumatizing sometimes. And you know, the trauma also that comes with the fact that you tend to think that, oh, for me, I don't deserve the good things in life because people come and they just dump anything. You know, because we are orphans or it's an orphanage, they can pack their tattered clothes, food that is almost near expiry, and then they just come to dump it there. And so when you see, you know, clothes being shared and then it started, you develop that low self-esteem of yourself that, okay, as for me, I don't deserve, you know, I don't deserve the best things in life. And some of us, it really took a lot of work to come out of all of these, I mean, trauma, family dysfunctionality, and the emotional and psychological effects. And these are just a few of the negatives that I can mention. I mean, regarding children growing up in orphanages, there are so many more that the eyes cannot see. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
let me ask you this whilst you are still on the psychological effects. Do you think being in an orphanage even affects the children's aspirations? Like when you are a child and they ask you, what do you want to be? You know, we say very, very high things. You have lived there and have encountered a lot of orphans. Do you think their aspirations are lower compared to the children who are living with both parents?
Yes, I would say yes, because but well, I can't say it for all orphanages, because there are some orphanage founders that are really trying to expose the children under their care to a lot of opportunities. But majority of the orphanages, I mean, don't expose these children to a lot of things, because number one, they are afraid that once these children get exposed too much, it might affect them. So for instance, where I was like this, it got to a time we weren't watching television. We're just confined. So you don't even know what is happening out there. It's just the people you see around, the few teachers that comes to teach, and probably maybe if we are fortunate, the few donors that comes around. So I mean, there is no the aspiration there, the desire to really make it is not really as high compared to, living with your parents or living with an auntie and seeing a lot of things for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'd say it really affects the way we think, the way we aspire and dream in life. It really affects it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You mentioned that some founders of orphanages expose their children to better things or much more things.
Yeah.
Do you have experience in, I mean, like the laws of Ghana and who has the right to build an orphanage? Can anyone just build an orphanage?
Okay. So yes, initially, yes. Anyone at all could start an orphanage once you obtain the license from social welfare. So there are national laws regulating residential homes in Ghana. So residential homes for children is also known as orphanages. But now that the orphanage, the name orphanage has taken over that residential homes for children. But in the books, that's what you see. And yes, there are laws regulating it, but I'm sorry to say that when we pick all orphanages in Ghana, I can talk for SOS Children's Village. They are the ones that are really, at par or really doing some good job regarding the standard, like how it's supposed to be. But the rest of the orphanages, I can't say much, because they are not really going by the national laws of the land. And in the national laws of the land, one thing is, in every orphanage, the children shouldn't be more than 60. And it came to they not being more than 30. But you go to orphanages and you see 100 of children, 120, 150. And in a way, like it's really affecting the case. But thanks be to God, now social welfare is not giving license to operate orphanages again. So the idea is to send all of these children in orphanages back into families. So there are laws, but now if you want to start an orphanage, you cannot do it anymore, because we want to move past that era of keeping children in institutions and pushing them rather to live in families. Yeah.
Have you, so from what you're saying, I'm assuming there are private owned orphanages and government owned orphanages, right?
Yeah. Yes,
You've
there are.
interacted with both of them.
Yes.
What are the differences you see?
I would say, well, with the government-run orphanages, the support, because it's a government-owned, the government gives a quota, but even that is not really much. And people tend to trust that orphanage the more. For instance, also children's home, people tend to visit the place a lot to donate and all of that, because they believe once it's associated with the government, it means they are credible. But it's not much. The state-run orphanages are not much. a lot of the orphanages as we stand now or as we speak now are private owned, and we have 146 orphanages in Ghana now.
Wow.
And out of the 146, like 5 of them is state owned, the rest are all private. Yes, so it's basically some few homes that are run by the government. Even with that one, the conditions are not the best. Say, I mean, there is no better orphanage as required, as the laws require, whether government or private. I mean, there is no one that is really up to that standard yet in Ghana.
Wow.
Yeah, we should do a lot more.
You talked about the government quota for government-owned orphanages. And I know that there are people who also donate to orphanages, individuals and organizations. Are those donations enough?
That's a big question. So it's not enough. It's not enough. But fortunately, the orphanages in Accra, most of them are a bit fortunate because they tend to get majority of the people trooping in to donate. But those scattered across or outside of Accra, they really suffer a lot. So for instance, where I grew up, it's located in the eastern region, and there were days that we had to cut down the quantity of food we cooked. So for instance, if every child was getting like 2 ladles of rice or 2 scoops of rice, it reduced to 1 because donations weren't coming, and they had to, proportion the food such that it can take us throughout. And there were days that we had to go credit food from, these vendors and later pay off. So it's not the same. The distribution is not equal. Those in Accra stands a better chance compared to those outside of Accra.
Wow. So when you credit the food, is there some work that how does the money come in? Let's, if there are no donations, and if the donations that are coming in are not monetary donations, how do you pay for the things you've credited?
Yeah, so with my place like this, what our father did was doing was there were people outside of, aside the people that come to donate, he had some few contacts that once in a while he reaches out to them, talk to them about their needs, and then they send in some cash donations. And there was a quota of the students also that were paying fees, or they were like fee paying. It was a school and then an orphanage. So fees of the fee paying students sometimes was used to support or run the home in terms of the food we eat and then other administrative costs. So that was how my place was run. But I can't really talk more for others, but I'm sure it might follow the same approach.
Yeah. In your orphanage in Eastern Region, was it in a town where, like if it was in Accra, there wouldn't be any land or anything around it? But I feel that you could probably grow some vegetables in the backyard. Is there anything like that in orphanages, at least those that are not in Accra? Do you see anything like that?
Yes, so my place, we had a school farm, we had a piggery, we had a poultry farm as well. But they weren't sustainable. We could run them for, I think it lasted for like 4 or 5 years, and that was it, because the feeding of the pigs and then the poultry was also becoming expensive.
Yeah.
And when donations don't come, there is no protein. We end up, slaughtering these pigs or fowls for food. So at the end of the day, it wasn't really sustainable. And we had a farm where we used to farm maize and cassava. But at a point too, it was becoming a bit stressful because getting a farm manager or a caretaker who could run the place successfully was also becoming expensive. And back then, the students weren't old enough to weed, to do, the tedious work on the farm. All we could do was help with collection. So when they harvest, we go collect it. If there are maybe some firewood or something, we go gather them and bring them. We couldn't really do the tedious part of the work. So yeah, it was sustainable, but not really. It wasn't too much sustainable at a point. So we had to just stop it.
Let's talk about when the donations come in. I know a lot of people bring donations to orphanages during Christmas or Easter.
Yes.
Are how is the donations spread out through the year?
Yes. So like I mentioned, the Easter, Christmas, like peak seasons, a lot of dress, a lot of food, packed, cooked, uncooked. So what we do is, like I mentioned, the proportioning. We have to plan. So if, for instance, in Christmas we get like 10 bags of maize, we plan it such that the 10 bags can last at least for some few months, like maybe 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
And it's done by proportioning how much of the maize or quantity of the maize we soak and mail at a time, and what quantity we cook as banku or what quantity we use as porridge. So if there is more of maize compared to maybe beans, then we proportion it and eat banku more so that we can keep the beans. If there is more of rice than maize, then it means we eat rice more. So we ate based on what was available most. So if this season we had all rice, then it means we eat rice throughout. And with my orphanage, why I grew up like this, for all the 10 years that I stayed, every afternoon we're taking beans. I can count like the number of afternoons we ate rice, because that was what we had at that time. Rice was seen as, it was a big deal for us. To eat rice was really a big deal because donation in that area wasn't much per that time. It was maize, beans, and gari. So these were the foods, the main foods that were, rationing and proportioning per time. Just was going. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. Let's talk about when you mentioned that the children in the orphanage were young at a certain point in time. At what point can you say that you have to leave an orphanage? At what age? Because I'm assuming you can't stay there forever.
Yeah, you can't stay there forever. Yes. So in every orphanage, the laws of the land requires that at age 18, you are considered an adult. So once you are 18 years, I normally use the word kick out, like you're kicked out, but it's a harsh word to use. So let me say at 18 years, you are asked to go. Sometimes you get to 18. Now, once you're done with senior high school, most of the orphanages are able to support the child up to junior high, sorry, not senior high. Yes. Most of them is junior high. So once you're done with junior high school, some social workers come around and then try to reunify you with your relatives. So before you get to that junior high 3, that's the final year, or if you are fortunate and that orphanage supports up to senior high level, then it means in your final year in the senior high school, you have to locate a relative at all costs, because you won't stay. It's a must. And you the student, you wouldn't feel that belonging anymore, because when by the time you come, your bed is taken. So I remember my time like this. There are times that we pack. So for instance, we move a child to join another child on his or her bed, and then we the seniors will use the bed. There wasn't any room for all students. Like once you leave and come back, there's no room for you anymore. So you have to just exit, find your way around. So at age 18, in the whole, I think worldwide, except Indonesia, Indonesia allows children to stay in care up to 22 years.
Wow.
But all other countries, when you're 18, you have to find your way out.
And you were even saying that for junior high school leavers, they have to find a way out. Junior high school right now, at what age do people leave junior high schools? They are not even 18.
18, yes. They're not 18, sometimes 14, 15. Yeah, they are not.
So what?
It's it's a lot of struggle. Like, and at that age is the most sensitive age. You can't just leave that child because number one, the child has lost ties with the family. Sometimes they go back and the family is not even willing to take that extra mouth or extra person to feed.
Mm-hmm.
So as we speak, I have a lot of my siblings who grew up in the orphanage, living with relatives, living with friends, living with they're just living anywhere just to survive because some are not able to even fit. They don't fit anymore into the families they pick them from. So that is one thing my NGO is doing now, like advocating for family-based care instead, so that at the end of your family wouldn't kick you out when you're 18.
Yeah.
Family is permanent. Do you get it? So that's what we all have to do, like advocate and not just opt for an orphanage, the least chance. I mean, the least thing we see, hey, send a child to the orphanage. It's really not the best.
Wow.
Because it's not sustainable. It's just a temporary, it provides a temporary solution, but a lasting negative impact. That is how I find it.
I mean, that's the perfect description. A temporary solution, but then it leaves a lasting negative impact. I mean, if you are 14 and you have to leave the orphanage. At that point, there is peer pressure already. The teenage age is very tricky. Now, this person has to leave. And sometimes when we see children on the street, like young boys, we ask them, where are your parents? Like we seem to get angry that they are on the streets. But I think it's because the resources are not there. The care is not there for them.
So it's really sad. I mean, that are part of the world. It's sad that not much attention is given to areas as this. Nobody really cares. Like, not even the government. It's just individuals. That some individuals that are passionate about issues like this. Yeah.
I have to bring in this because I know there are a lot of child trafficking issues going on around the world. And I feel that children in orphanages are most susceptible to these things because they have nowhere to go to. What do you say about that?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, researches and all of that proves that one major factor, or yes, rising factor when it comes to child trafficking has to do with orphanages. People build orphanages with that intention, just smuggle children to do worse things. Sometimes sell this kid off in the name of poverty, in the name of we want to help your child. And normally they present the situation to the parents or to the relatives in a nice way. Oh, there is a school here. We'll take care of your child. We'll provide the child food. And if a parent is suffering, who wouldn't want that? So in a way, they also did that at the blind side. But thankfully now people are becoming, I mean, that sense of awareness, it's growing. There's more of sensitization in that area. So that trafficking, it's coming down. The rate is coming down, and the rate at which people are also allowed to build orphanages has ceased now.
Yeah.
But before it was, I mean, because they couldn't even account for the number of children in the home, like how many children per time. But now I think there's more, strict measures in how a child enters the orphanage. So we're able to account for the child. Hence, all these trafficking issues are coming down.
Wow. Wow. Can you tell us a bit about your organization and what you do?
Yes. So Caristart Foundation is an NGO that supports orphans and vulnerable children. And it was born out of inspiration. I mean, from my background, I felt like, no, I lived it. I lived the experience. So I'll be the better person to do this particular work that I'm doing in terms of advocacy. So mainly what we do is advocacy. Like we are trying to advocate to people not to put children into institutions, no matter what. Like poverty shouldn't be the reason why you separate a child from his or her family. Or I think the best thing that anybody can do for a family in need is to help that family. So for instance, if you notice a single mother, just help that mother, maybe start a trade or something, and mother keep the child than talking the child talking to the mother's child to get a child to live in an orphanage. That is the worst thing you can ever do for anybody. So that is what we are into at the moment. And I've written a couple of books just to help people understand the situation the more. And we hope to, as time goes on, get bigger platforms and keep educating the general public on the dangers of having to, keep children in orphanages. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's really what we are into now.
I will put the link to your books down in the description so that anyone who is inspired and want to read it can get it on Amazon or wherever it is available at.
Sure.
How can we? Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm saying that the books, it's on my website and it's also on Amazon. So anywhere, anybody.
Okay. How can people reach out to you and how can people help your organization?
Yes, so you can help in so many ways. You can help by registering to be an advocate. So we are trying to recruit as many people that are interested in using their voices in positive ways. So register, become a member. We'll take you through some few weeks of training so that wherever you are in this world, regardless, you can also speak out for orphans and vulnerable children. Because a lot of people don't really know much and what really goes into it. So that is one way you can help. Just sign up, become a member, we take you through, and then become a certified advocate, if I'll put it. You could also help us financial wise. You could sign up as a partner where every month you contribute a quota to support the work that we do. You could also get copies of my books because percentages of copies or income that comes from my books are pushed into our advocacy work. So that is also one way. And you could tell a friend to tell a friend. Just recommend us to somebody you think can help. Yeah. So there are ways anyone can help. And I can be reached on dzifatamakloe.com. Just dzifatamakloe.com. Everything about me, contacts can be found there.
Yeah, I will put that in the description as well. Thank you so much, Debbie, for having this conversation with us. I really appreciate it. One thing I wanted to go in depth into is the process of adoption from these orphanages, but we will have a separate conversation so that you give us information about this. Thank you so much for all you do, and I hope that listeners would contribute and have the same passion that you have for orphanages and orphans. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, Gifty.
Right. Bye.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, like the video, and click the notification bell to be notified of our next video. Until then, please make sure you have at least one good conversation this week.